Good evening. Settle in as we head to Sumer, where the first kings look less like conquerors and more like custodians of memory who managed water with dikes and canals, stored grain in halls, set work by weights, tallied rations on clay, and kept stories that carried know-how after trouble and floods. The from-scratch story is the mistake. Early cities ran on borrowed memory, not fresh invention. Let's step quietly toward the first clay-lit room. Your feet rest on a mud brick rooftop at dusk. The city spreads around you in low walls and courtyards. Warm air brushes the drying bricks nearby. The cool rim of a clay water jar against your palm steadies your breath. A faint lap of water comes from the canal beyond. In the courtyard below, a small lamp glows near a reed mat. A scribe bends over wet clay. The stylus makes a soft scratch. Pause. Scratch. He is not writing poetry. He is counting and labeling. Grain from the harvest, beer rations for workers, signs that mark herds, fields, and measures. Early writing grows here because someone must track food, people, and time. The stakes are plain. Rivers can flood hard or swing wide and miss a bank. Fields need canals, levees, and careful timing. Food must be stored in jars and silos, then moved without waste. People must show up to dig, to pile, to measure, and to carry. Foremen, temple managers, and yes, kings, keep that wheel turning. Here, kingship is closer to chores than crowns. This city is a puzzle built from older pieces. Earlier walls lie under newer ones, and old canal lines teach where new ditches should run. Old stories whisper under the work. A list from long ago says there was a great flood, and after it, rule returned to cities. Flood tales ripple across this region, and they sit beside tax notes and job rosters. So the gentle question comes in. If some leaders were survivors or students of a lost time, what would they carry forward? Not shining gadgets. Habits. How to cut a canal level with a line and a cord. How to set grain into sealed jars against damp air. How to track months by the moon so workers show up when fields are ready. The scribe's lamp is small, but it throws light on those habits. The job of a first king here looks like a supervisor's board. One eye on water, one on grain, one on people. That is how stories turn into tools. A tale of a flood is a warning to raise a levee higher. A divine title is a way to make schedules stick. If there are memories from an older world curled inside these tasks, they last because they are useful in daily work. No sparkle needed. Clay, reeds, and steady hands are enough. If you want to see that memory at work, you watch how they try to pin down the calendar, the work list, the flood season. Let's begin with a tablet that tried to organize time itself. One scribe smooths a damp tablet by lamplight. His wrist is steady. Lamplight flickers across reed impressions on clay. Warm clay smell meets faint oil smoke. A baked clay tablet sits nearby as a guide. He checks the lines, then scores one more. A fingertip leaves a shallow groove, then smooths it away. The soft scratch of the reed stylus marks time. Some copies take a prism shape with 4 flat sides. A hole through the center once held a peg, so it could be turned in the hand. The baked clay tablet looks simple, yet its design keeps columns straight under low light. This text is the Sumerian King List. It moves in a slow rhythm. City name, king name, reign length. The tone is calm and official, like a ledger read aloud. The list says kingship began in the deep past, then moved from city to city. Eridu gets a turn. so do Bad Tibira, Larak, Sippar, and Shuruppak. The early rains stretch far past a human lifetime. Because the pre-flood rains sound superhuman, therefore they signal mythic authority. That tone matters to power. A current ruler can point to the pattern and say he stands in the same river. It is like a startup inflating metrics to impress sponsors. Crowns are excellent at math, but only the kind that adds prestige. Other versions tweak the order. One city gains a king, another loses one. That shuffle shows editors working with local pride and memory, then stitching them into a single line. One stock line says that kingship descended from heaven. It is a clear claim. Power is not seized. It arrives, stays for a time, then departs. Copying keeps the tune steady. Scribes learned this list in the scribal school copying tradition. Student hands pressed signs into damp clay until the phrasing felt fixed. Copies went from raw to baked when a kiln or a hearth hardened them. Standard lines carry standard claims. The list treats kingship as a gift that relocates when cities rise or fall. That move makes politics sound orderly and very old. The structure helps a new dynasty argue that its rule is legal and expected. Rulers in Kish, Uruk, or Ur could cite it in a court or at a gate. A herald could name the old cities and the sequence. A priest could point at the tablet and at the city shrine. Together, they made political legitimacy feel solid, like bricks in a wall. The calm voice helps. It lists giant reigns and humble ones in the same flat tone. That tone turns argument into fact. It reads like the ground rules of the world rather than a plea. The flood sits in the middle like a hinge. Before it, reigns sprawl. After it, counts shorten and the cities rotate. Those long reigns sit right next to a very famous flood, and that pairing casts a long shadow over everything that follows. The tablet now cools on its mat. The lamp droops. Let that tablet rest while the river outside keeps its slow rise and fall. Levees sit low at dawn, and water slides past in near silence. You stand on packed earth that holds the river in check. The air smells of damp silt and crushed reeds. A heron lifts slow over the channel, wings barely stirring air. Behind the bank, fields wait in broad squares. The levee keeps the spring surge from tearing the soil and holds water long enough to guide it into canals. The faint lap against the berm ticks like a steady clock. Canals cut the plain into clean lines. Each branch feeds a set of fields, and each field depends on a controlled overflow. Gates and weirs decide who drinks first. An irrigation overseer paces the bank with a staff, eyeing the slope. A canal inspector notes a clogged reach and calls a crew. Fine salt crust glitters on a drying patch of earth. If water sits and sun lifts it, salts stay behind and crops fail, so channels must move and drain on time. Rivers here wander, split, and bury old beds with new silt. Because they wander and dump silt, therefore cities rebuild and shift repeatedly. A quay that met barges can meet dust a few years later. The work never stops. Dikes rise and canals are dredged. Beds are cut straighter to keep a pull. In the end, the mud always has the last word. All this takes hands that follow one plan. It was like moderating a group chat that never sleeps. Crews lift baskets of mud and set reed mats to armor a bank. Supervisors count days of corvée and mark who showed. Scribes note the depth at a gauge post and the opening of a gate. Farmers time planting to that opening. If a channel is late, seed rots or salts rise, and if it runs too fast, earth goes with it. Flood memory here is not fantasy. It is seasonal policy with long shadows. People remember which bend broke, which gate jammed with roots, and which field salted early. They turn that record into rules. A standard bucket measures water, a standard field line sets duty hours, and a sign on clay says which village clears, which reach when the level drops. The scratch of a reed stylus makes that memory hard to argue with. If memory mattered, someone had to shape it into simple tools and into lists you could read by lamplight. So we move from channels to counters, where memory gets stamped in clay. Take one long inhale, slow and quiet. Air moves cool at the tip of your nose, then leaves warm. Let the exhale drop your shoulders. Take your time. We have seen clay lists pressed by steady hands. We watched rivers shift their beds and wander. We noticed careful hands measuring grain and marking work. We met early kings acting like keepers, setting measures and simple rations. We saw granaries brace a town through change. We heard stories carry hints on how to dig and when to move. The reed stylus made a soft scratch, and water tapped along the bank. Nothing needs to be solved tonight. We can keep it simple and unhurried. Dates can wait. Titles can blur. The shape of care remains. Take another breath, a touch longer. Let the jaw slacken as you breathe out. Feel the tongue rest heavy behind your teeth. The room's quiet returns between each measured breath. This is as much about rest as it is about understanding. Because rest matters as much as understanding. Therefore, we let the mind do less work. The stories can hum in the background like a calm stream. The main lines stay clear enough. Set a soft intention to follow the next small details without effort. Let curiosity be light. Let attention sit back and watch. Let the next pieces float by like boats you do not need to steer. When you're ready, the counting tokens are waiting on the mat. Baskets sit at your side on a woven reed mat. Inside, clay tokens are sorted by shape. Cones, spheres, and discs stand for counted goods that move through a city of canals and dust. A hand lifts two together and taps them once. You hear a soft click as clay meets clay. A steward reaches in and scoops a small set. Temple storehouse administration lives by these pieces. A cone might signal a unit of grain, a sphere a portion of oil, a disc a head of livestock. Tokens travel in sealed clay envelopes called bulle, their impressions stamped on the outside so a guard can check counts without breaking anything. Cylinder seals roll across wet clay to fix the deal. A squat vessel sits nearby, the bevel-rim bowl. It is rough, mold-made, and cheap. Its volume is plain and repeatable, which suits a ration line. A ladle pours barley or barley dough until the bowl is level. Then a worker takes it and steps away. Stacked bowls thrum softly when one is set atop another. Standardized rations make life steady and trackable, yet they pull people toward the storehouse and its schedule. That is the dependence trade-off in standardized rations. Because counting grew complicated, therefore marks fixed memory on tablets. Bulle with tokens give way to tablets with token impressions, then to marks made directly by hand. A reed stylus presses neat wedges, then pauses before the next line. Numeral signs sit beside commodity signs. Barley, beer, workdays, and sheep all earn their own marks. A tablet becomes a portable storehouse wall, small enough to tuck under an arm, firm enough to argue back if someone forgets. Think of it like barcode stickers before barcodes existed. This is where bureaucracy invents bedtime for numbers. Lists multiply. One tablet records grain dispersed to crews. Another counts bricks delivered to a canal cut. A third tallies sheep supervised by a named herder. Labor rosters pair personal names or titles with daily allocations of barley and beer. The writing is early and spare, yet it does the job. It pins quantities to people and tasks so work can be claimed, paid, and checked. Temple storehouse administration grows a memory that lasts longer than a voice and reaches farther than a single courtyard. Scribes practice to keep this memory clean. They learn number systems that shift by context, and they learn commodity signs that tell you what the number means. Tablets carry seal impressions that bind an allotment to an office or a person. Tallies can be audited by a new steward tomorrow, or by an official from another quarter next month. Uniform bowls and standard signs meet in a simple, strict rhythm that feeds bodies and projects both. There is a payoff hiding in the plain clay. Writing begins as a way to track people, grain, and work with a reliability that talk alone cannot keep. Control over rations and assignments rides on these marks. In return, workers gain predictable payments and shared measures that turn negotiation into a line and a stamp. The city gets a clock for labor that ticks in clay. Numbers are useful, but they sit still. Someone still has to haul silt, cut feeder ditches, and shape bricks for walls and canals. Teams stand in the sun with shovels and baskets while supervisors carry tablets that decide the share. The marks are set. Now meet the hands that enforce them. A brick mold line runs along the yard. Workers bend, scoop clay, and press it into frames. A shovel brings canal silt to the mixing pit, and straw is kneaded in to temper the mass. Arms rise and drop in a steady rhythm, and wet clay slaps wood. Fresh bricks line up in rows, steam lifting faintly in heat. Sunlight dries the surface to a thin skin. A foreman's reed wand taps once, then the line resumes. Standardized brick keeps the wall true. Molds match across teams, so bricks stack clean and courses stay level. A city or temple stamp sits on the face, turning each brick into a counted unit. That lets one work gang pick up where another left off without waste. Kilns fire only some of these blocks, while most go to dry in the open air. The mix is practical, not pretty. A measure stick checks length, a cord checks height, and rows get tallied on small clay tags. The system looks simple, yet the pattern holds across quarters of the city. Titles like Lugal or Ensi read like jobs, not just honors. Their offices tie to the timing of flood and sun. Scribes tally molds, stewards call crews, and overseers schedule dredging and kiln fuel. The corvée labor obligation pulls households into these shifts, a civic tax paid in days and sweat. Canals silt fast in this flat land. Harvests shrink because irrigation fails without upkeep. Therefore, orders centralize and bite harder. Crews scrape channels, open weirs, patch levees, and clear the canal mouths where reeds creep in. The work forces water to keep faith with the fields. A roster plants one team at the kiln and another at the canal head, so brick and water move together. Think of it like a city mayor mixed with a project manager. The crown was heavy, mostly with schedules. Authority lasts by keeping granaries steady, not by speeches. Rations move on reed tallies, with barley and beer issued for shifts done at the yard or the canal. Bags get sealed with a cylinder seal roll, and the count travels from storehouse to work line without losing its place. People judge a rain when water arrives on time, and grain bins stand firm through lean months. Temple yards and palace docks join this flow. Boats bring reeds and fuel upriver, then take bricks out to the levees. Water laps at the embankment beside the yard, a low sound under the clack of frames and the murmur of counting. Rulers do not just sit above it. They visit the work sites or send inspectors with tablets and reed pens to check the pace. A missed dredging week can undo a season's plan. So the office binds itself to the calendar, to the gate that opens at dawn, and to the hour the last row of molds gets filled. As the low ground firms and drains, foundations rise. Brick by standard brick, platforms lift storage in shrines above the wet and the heat, and the high places begin to matter. Follow the line of bricks upward now, where raised platforms start to shape how a city keeps its memory. A packed earthen ramp climbs toward a platform's edge. Footfalls send tiny avalanches of grit down the slope. A mild breeze cools your skin. The city grid shrinks below, neat as scored clay. The ramp is a wedge of tamped earth, sherds, and gravel, rebuilt as often as the walls above it. Teams rebuild on old rooms, not beside them. They level fallen walls, then stack sun-dried and fired clay bricks into fresh courses. Sun glints on fired clay bricks along the parapet. Chalky dust licks the tongue. Crews slap mud into frames and slide out sun-dried bricks by the hundreds. Kilns bake special courses for corners, drains, and stair treads. Many bricks carry a stamp with a ruler's name, which turns a wall into a ledger. Bitumen seals joints on the weather face, so the first rain runs off instead of soaking in. Layer on layer makes a tell, and a platform temple, a proto-ziggurat, claims the crown. High ground keeps the sanctuary dry when the rivers rise. A terrace clears the flood line that marks rough seasons. Storerooms at the top keep grain dry, and benches hold statues, tools, and offerings. Watchers can see levee leaks early. Ramps and stairways break the slope into manageable climbs. Because high ground stays safest, therefore sacred platforms grow taller over time. Builders pipe runoff, pack fill, and brace stairs. Yet even a great mound can sag if drains clog and walls slump. Poor care brings subsidence or even collapse. The faint lap of canal water reaches the ramp, and a clerk's reed scratches in a nearby room. Think of it like saving new edits over the same digital file. Each rebuild keeps old alignments alive. Door lines repeat. Courtyards return. Ritual paths climb the same corners. Foundations hide jars with small tokens set by workers who ask for steadiness. Cone mosaics color the frontage and echo patterns older than memory. When a corner falls, its rubble becomes the next core. So lines drift, but the plan holds. Ruins are excellent at real estate. They come with a view and a verified address. Elevation becomes both ritual and flood insurance at once. The city learns to build up and to build smart. Retaining walls take the shove of wet seasons and spare the sacred rooms. Drains lined with fired brick spit water into canals. Terrace edges get refaced when they crack, and stair treads get replaced where sandals bite. Priests and foremen walk the parapets and read the seams like a diary. A platform is an archive of hands and habits, and a high place that buys time when the water comes fast. Height helps, but distance decides what a city can gather. Stone for thresholds rides down from the north on barges. Cedar or tall date palm trunks for big spans come by caravan or raft. Copper and tin arrive as ingots, not from the clay at your feet. Timbers long enough for roofs grow far away. Hard stone and good metal arrive only by cart or boat. From height to horizon, look to the roots that feed the city. A slow inhale for 4 beats. Hold for a moment, then let it out for 6. Cool air brushes your nose. The chest loosens as it drops. Lists on clay sat by the doorway of storerooms. A reed stylus scratched wet tablets, marking tallies of barley jars, goat kids, and work rations. Canal lines cut the plain, guided by stakes and eye. Crews hauled silt from banks. Granaries took in harvest under seal. Platforms lifted shrines above damp ground, steady in flood time. Temple. Managers set tasks and weights so people could trade fare and plan work. Think of it like a community whiteboard that everyone trusts. Because lists, levies, and shared measures trained memory into habit, therefore early kings could act like caretakers after trouble, not roaming heroes. Tonight is a drift, not a cram. Names can wait. The thread stays close and plain. Lists, water, work, platforms. Breath moves like a quiet tide, in and out. Another easy breath follows. Inhale slow, hold lightly, and let shoulders soften as you exhale. Distant water sounds blur into the room's own hush. A small glow sits steady in your mind. Small room sounds return at their own pace. A faint fan hum and a soft floor creak. Nothing urgent. The reed scratch and canal lap sit farther back now, like a note remembered. Boats on the canal drift with the current, and stories do the same in a settled mind. You do not need to steer hard. You only watch as hulls slip by, and as old lines of verse and rule slide past the banks. As your breath settles, faint wakes ripple along a brown-green channel. A low key of brick waits as a reed boat noses in. The reed boat's bitumen caulking smells sharp. The mooring ropes creak against wet wood. Water beads on black pitch, catching small points of light. Hands catch the gunnels. A clerk looks up from his stool. Southern cities lacked tall timber, hard stone, and bright metal. Cedar and pine came from hills to the west and from the north. Date palms were local, but not long enough for wide halls or docks. Big logs moved down from the Zagros by river, and sometimes from the Levant by coast. Copper reached the delta from northern mines and from Gulf partners like Dilmun and Magan. Stone arrived from Iran and Anatolia, with diorite and limestone, and rare blue chips from farther east. The routes tied canals to the main rivers, then to caravans and seacraft. Reed boats worked the canals. Plank ships took the Gulf. Port towns like turned into funnels for the flow. Because local wood, stone, and metal ran thin on the plain, therefore long-distance trade became routine policy. It was like relying on a backup cloud server in another city. Palaces and temples wrote to partners, set delivery windows, and backed loans to keep the flow steady. Teams watched river levels and winds. Crews timed departures to catch safe water and to hit markets before prices moved. Merchant groups and boatman networks managed the flow. Temples posted rations, set quotas, and lent silver. Scribes tracked cargo with standard weights and cylinder seals. A ledger board thumps softly as it's set on a crate. The soft scratch of a reed stylus follows, neat marks in damp clay. Rules grew from this, such as fees, mooring rights, and fair shares for crews. Skippers kept tallies of oars, spare rope, and pitch. Port chiefs counted headloads at the ramp and checked ceilings on jars. Voyages also failed. Sandbars shifted and swallowed channels. The Gulf kicked up short, steep waves. A ship could capsize, and cargo loss stung. A shipwreck could vanish into silt. Budgets hate empty warehouses. Contracts spread risk across families, crews, and the temple. Skippers swore oaths at the quay. The canal laps at the bricks. If a convoy missed the season, walls, docks, and workshops stalled. Most loads were lifelines, not luxuries. Timbers became roof beams and floodgates. Copper became axes, chisels and nails for coffers and sleds. Stone became door sockets, grinding plates, and sturdy thresholds. Merchants and boatmen carried the city's breath, day after day. Goods arrived, but meanings traveled too, in stories and in schools. As workers stacked crates, an older tale went up with them. A low bench sits under a reed lamp. A student leans in, copying a tale line by line on a damp tablet. Tablet clay cools the fingertips. The stylus clicks lightly with each sign. A basket holds spare tablets and a water bowl for softening edges, while a second boy shares the bench. A tablet holds a flood tale. It names a warned builder, a boat built in a hurry, and a reset after the waters. Wet clay shines before it dulls as lines accumulate. A teacher's shadow crosses the tablet, then moves on. The builder gathers family and seeds, shutters the door, rides out the swell, and then gives thanks and starts again with rules about work and worship. Scribes learned by copying these tablets in the Eduba, the temple school. In cities across the southern plain, boys sat at benches and recited, then wrote, then pressed the same lines again until the signs felt like muscle. They copied myths, hymns, and word lists, and they also copied contracts, measures, and model letters used by real offices. Because stories stick better than rules, therefore advice survives disruptions. Like pinning a safety thread at the top of a forum. Here, heroes double as compliance trainers. The warned builder listens, gathers wood, seals seams with thick pitch, ties ropes, counts animals, and follows a timetable that tells when to board and when to wait. The tale folds in who to trust, which messenger to heed, and which storehouse to open first. It reads like a checklist disguised as adventure, with the boat plan, the tools to keep dry, and the order of work tucked into the plot. Copying drills set habits. The Eduba trained young hands to standardize measures, tally grain, and note canal gates in neat columns, so a city could run even in hard seasons. Teachers assigned proverbs about fairness and duty, and stories encoded warnings and responsibilities without a finger wag. School texts about a lazy student and his teacher set expectations, and dialogues about the farmer and the fields map who owes water, and when to share labor. When a flood list says, save seeds and keep records dry, a clerk later knows to seal jars and stack tablets higher. Stories are memory, and daily habits are where memory hides. The workroom air cools as the lamp fades. The reed scratch continues, steady and small, and a faint lap of water brushes the canal outside. When the tablet is filled, the student sets it aside to dry and reaches for a fresh one, and the room settles. Let the story step with you through the doorway and into the ordinary kitchen. A cylinder seal rolls across soft clay at a doorway. The little stone turns in a steady hand, and images of beasts and gods press into the clay like a careful knot. A seal's tiny figures leave crisp tracks. Then the door is tied. The lump will harden and show if anyone tried to lift the cord. A small brewery corner warms a wall. Yeast-sour air drifts from pots where malted grain steeps, and a worker hums as she skims the mash for the next jar. Foam sighs at the lip of a cooling beer jar. Beer in places like this is made in households and temple yards, a daily craft under watch of people who know the steps. Ration lists sit by the jars. A tablet notes barley for bread, beer allotments for crews, and the day count when each team receives its measure. A simple calendar ties to a field schedule, and outside, a plow scrapes neat furrows while oxen lean into the yoke. Water comes by canal on a planned turn, and if the crew slips the clearing or the date, silt can choke the gate and yields can drop, which means shortages follow in the city when the baskets come up light. Hands repeat the same moves each day. Because routine embeds knowledge, therefore memory hides in ordinary tasks. Think of it like meal prep scaled for an entire neighborhood. A scribe scratches a tally while the brewer stirs. Paperwork has a way of chasing you even into dinner time. The seal on a storeroom door matches the line on a clay tablet, and the jar that leaves gets a mark to match the worker's name. The records show what went in, what went out, and who is owed more bread and beer. It looks fussy, but it keeps the day from fraying at the edges when one person is late or one canal team forgets its turn. The plowman trusts the mark that says which field is next. The brewer trusts the list that says which batch goes to which gang of diggers, who will show up again only if their rations are there. A little cylinder and a small jar can hold more than grain and beer. They hold habits that outlast a boss or a season. If there were survivors of an older time, their know-how lives here, quiet and practical. A seal locks a door, a schedule locks a harvest, and the taste of beer tells you the yeast and water behaved. The useful bits travel by hand and by habit, not by grand speech. Kids watch, repeat, and carry the moves to the next day. This is a gentle place to stop. Let the seal harden. Let the room come back to you. Keep what is useful and set the rest down for the night. Thanks for drifting with me through clay, water, and work tonight. The reed stylus kept its soft scratch. The canal edges held that faint lap in the dark. Your attention made a quiet room feel like a small workshop, with cool clay underhand. We passed tablets on low shelves, canal gates set for the season, and jars of grain. Whether or not survivors stood at the start, those first Sumerian kings acted like keepers of older memory, organizing water, storing grain, setting shared measures, and turning stories into tools after upheaval. The rest is still a little dim, and that is honest. Tablets crack, myths braid, floodlines confuse. Any unanswered details can wait for another night. We can let the big questions drowse at the edge of the lamp and meet them when morning is clear. If this helped you settle, feel free to like or subscribe, only if it made rest easier. It tells me this slow, fact-friendly wander helps, and it keeps the read light on. May your sleep run steady, as reliable as a well-timed canal. Let your thoughts settle. Let your shoulders ease. Wake with a clear head and an easy jaw. Let the reed scratch fade back into the hush of your room. The workshop dims, and the river slips to the edge of hearing. Let the last sound be your own breath, and nothing urgent at